Caroline, I think you have mentioned that there have been a number of times where, accidental or not, um, you have come into some interesting mentors of your own. And let's just kind of unpack that. So, for those who have not watched that other episode, go find it or not. But Caroline, could you give us a little background into who it is that is sitting here before us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated Drexel in 2010 with a finance major. From there, I actually jumped into the retail merchandising side of the world at Bloomingdale's. And then I spent most of my career at Amazon for the next 10 years across a couple different verticals within again, the retail side of the business, then transitioning over into the product marketing side, helping to expand products into global markets, and then on the live stream side of the business.
There are some of those who just have this weird, crazy drive and, I don't know, figuring it outness. Sometimes serendipity, but I think along the way, those who seem to do exceptionally well oftentimes bump into having some kind of support somewhere, right? Do you happen to know when the earliest iteration of that was? Whether it's like, hey, I need to go find a mentor, or it's like, hey, this person, in hindsight, was someone who kind of like kept me afloat.
Absolutely. I mean, it began in college. It began when I was going through the Drexel co-op system, and while the university provided great resources, I realized I wanted more one-on-one attention to understand how to make a move in my career. So you could say this kind of like loosely as it started as a mentorship, but really it was a more formalized process. But I joined a business fraternity and I actually viewed that as like a mentorship process where you had a big brother who would help guide you along the way through your professional endeavors. And so I absolutely found that to be a type of mentorship where that one was a little bit because it was, started through the Connection University. So there was a bit of more of like a two-way street type of relationship. I think a lot of mentorships, I mean, they can really be however you want it to be, but at least most of my mentorships after that have been more one-sided, where if I'm the mentee, I'm looking to gain more from the mentor. It's not as two-sided. So I'd say the first one I looked at was in college, and I looked for a more formal process, which is why I joined the business fraternity Alpha Kappa Psi. And then from there, afterwards into my career, I learned that there were gaps and areas that I wanted to focus in and really improve upon. And so that's kind of where I started to find certain mentorships, particularly at Amazon.
And there, I for me, okay. So I'm trying to frame this in my head. So by the time you were in Amazon, you were probably what, like mid 20s, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you got, what is it, young, dumb, and hungry is usually the mentality of that phase of life. I mean, how much of it was you kind of struggle busting through things, and how much of it was like, you know what, man, I'm in my lane. Like, how much of it was one or the other?
Hmm. I want to say it's somewhere between because there were definitely moments in my career. Well, let me take a step back. I think the times that I really sought a mentor more was when I was making a pretty big pivot in my career. So specifically, I started in the more retail merchandising side of the world. And then I wanted to make a pretty big change from that retail vendor management side into marketing. And so that was a pretty big pivot for me. And so that's where I started to look for a couple marketing mentors to help supplement what I was learning in my day-to-day work. So I think the moments in my career where I was making a pretty big shift were the times that I looked much harder and I looked for
And
multiple mentors.
but like, what was the I suppose, what was the rubric or the criteria in which that you were like, hey, like, I need to ask this person, as opposed to, like, how much of it was like, I need to pick, I need to talk to Jane as opposed to Bob.
It was what I was looking, I usually went in finding a mentorship with a purpose.
Mhm.
So when I switched to marketing, I specifically wanted someone who was in marketing someone who was adjacent to the team I was working on that would be more familiar. So it wasn't someone who was like marketing from a pretty different world, because specifically I wanted to learn how to be a strong marketer in my business. And so I wanted to find someone who was within the broader organization. So it was someone who could be a little more close and I could ask more tailored questions that they would understand and not just more general, tell me about a marketing funnel type of questions.
Interesting. And if you were to think back, how's it that you approached them, or like how did like I guess for me, I'm trying to understand the if I'm a complete dum dum with no understanding of how any of this works. Right? Think of like that new intern who's like, oh shoot, like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I want to talk to someone, but I don't want to look stupid. Like the person who just hasn't figured anything out. What is like kind of your process and whether identifying, building relationship or any of that.
Yeah, I mean, there are usually like two paths. One, there's like a more formal process if you're at a company. Typically, larger companies will have some sort of program where you can sign up and match and align with one based on a profile that you fill out and your interests. But I think if you go the other route where you don't really have that sort of structure there and you're just trying to like start from the bottom, or start from scratch really, I'd say to be very open and honest with what you're looking for. I would say especially if you're starting from the beginning, it's better to have a more broad reach. It's better to have a more open mind in what you're looking for, and then once you find that person, be specific in the type of feedback or the type of guidance you're looking for, because the better prepared you are as a mentee, the more the mentor can help you and the more valuable your time is together.
Absolutely. And I think I mean, this is where I find we sometimes have to fight our like human nature in a way, I guess, where
Hmm.
I think oftentimes when we are starting, you're trying to start this relationship with someone that to have some kind of rapport, and out of your nerves, you tend to scattershot everything. Like just try to reach for any branch just to find something to talk about, and then you ramble for like 30 minutes. And this person's probably sitting here like, okay, okay, why the hell are you in my office? Like, what do you want, man? Like, just tell me what it is, and we'll figure it out. Um, and for me, I think it's that. I think well, obviously, look, I think there is, depending on firm and culture, right? There are going to be some cases where you really are going to have to like read the room and figure out like which folks are approachable and which ones are not. But I would imagine if you are paying attention to the folks at work, it shouldn't be rocket science, you know? Um,
Yeah, I mean, typically, I think starting with the people that you work on projects, the more senior leaders who are there, they're the ones who are obviously going to know you first.
mhm,
And so being able to put out your work and, being able to represent yourself in a meeting puts you kind of in, another bucket when your work can speak for itself. When you are being, your own vocal supportive and advocate. So then when you approach that senior leader and you're asking for interest into developing a mentorship, it's a much easier answer for them to say yes once you already have built that sort of, um, reputation and prior.
yeah. There's, when we first thought about talking about this, I realized that a lot of my frame of reference was, quite honestly, like pre-COVID. Um, so, but, I do recognize that there is some level of adjustment to the way I typically would advise, like kids who are reaching out to me nowadays, because my typical route was to kind of get a lay of the land, right? Like anytime I started in any companies, there's a little bit of trying to figure out who's who, like whether in the hierarchy structure, but also like kind of taking a quiet inventory of, who are the people that I would trust to confide in for professional advice, who actually knows their stuff in the company, who are like this quiet, know all problem solvers that for some odd reason never want to take spotlight, right? Like I want to figure out who these people are, and and to that end, usually since we were in that era, we were always in the office, and I was usually the one who was organizing events and happy hours and things of that nature. I would always kind of make it a point to at least be in the ecosphere of like the people whom I saw could be a potential mentor for me, right? And for me, it's proximity. It was time and attention, if you will, right? Like I want to be in a situation where even if you and I are not going to have like detailed, in-depth conversations on a weekly basis, at least you're going to know who I am, some of the things that I've done. That way, at least if I come and ask you for a question, whatever, it's not a complete stranger, right? And I do recognize that there are a lot of I am talking to some kids or some folks who are starting their careers in a remote situation. Like we have maybe one or two teams meetings a month. Like usually it's maybe me and my boss or one other person. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. My honest answer is try your best. I know it's a non-answer, but it's hard for me to give you a solid answer until I understand the way your company works, right? At least in mine, well, the one that I worked for most recently, it wasn't uncommon. If like I could just reach out to whoever I want and be like, hey, like you got a minute? Like, can we talk about something, work it out, and whatever. So in reality, whether it's for work related stuff or offline advice, like people were accessible, and I'm kind of curious, has that change in culture really affected things for you much?
I think that, again, that varies based on each company, but I will say that I think what helps break the ice in developing or kicking off that mentorship is what I like to call a coffee chat mechanism. So if there's someone that you're interested in possibly developing that mentor-mentee relationship, but you want to first start to understand who they are, get to know them, and put a feeler out, I think an introduction when you're new at the company is very welcome. It shows it shows that you have interest in, growing your network and understanding who's who and what they do. And so I like to say, start off with what I like to call an informal coffee chat. And, that again started when we were in person and you could actually go out and grab a coffee together. But now you could just take it at home, have a cup of tea, take it as you will, and come prepared. Even though I say the coffee chat is informal, come prepared with your background, your elevator pitch of who you are, what you want in your career, and um, a couple talking points. It's even great if you do a little bit of research and understanding who is that person already, even though you're going to understand, take that time to have that back and forth and they'll give you their background and, slight elevator pitch. But do the research and see who they are, what organization, they're part of, possibly how long they've been at the company, maybe what projects they've worked on. So then you can come prepared with talking points where you could say, hey, I saw that you led X, Y, and Z project. That is really cool to me because I'm interested in A, B, and C. So can I learn a little bit more of your path and how you got there? And so when you're kind of coming in with these talking points prior, when you're doing that research, it kind of takes the tension off of this formality of mentorship or networking. They're all just really buzzy keywords at this point, where people just want to get to know how things are done and just looking for guidance and advice, especially now. Companies are going back into a hybrid model, so teams are really seated across anywhere in the country. So I still like to take forward this coffee chat mechanism that I've learned and developed and apply into the hybrid virtual world. And I think it really helps take the pressure off of some of the formality of what people are looking for.
For me, I openly admit this is probably just the way I have learned to approach things. It's just my MO, if you will. It's like for me, I always feel like I have to have something of use to the person. And a lot of times in my life, as much as I would say, I'll throw money at a deal for you. That's usually the people I'm talking to have money that makes me look extremely poor, right? So, there's always something that I try to figure out, like, what can I offer? But throughout your life, as you meet some of these folks, how have the dynamics changed throughout the years, or have they?
Hmm. I think it really varies. For me, when I pick up a mentor, I do it because I like to give back. And so I usually, when I start to take on those relationships, I see parts of myself in them. And it's almost like things I wish I could have known or could have told myself back then. And so from my personal opinion, I'm not looking for something um, in return. I'm just looking to make sure that our time is valuable together and that it's beneficial. So I can't say this anymore, but the preparedness is so helpful. A couple bullets, a couple talking points, a couple research that you've done to make the conversation a little bit more fluid and more natural. So there's a nice back and forth and it's not very one-sided. So that's kind of my perspective on mentorship. I don't think that a mentee needs to feel that they're um, need to
Somehow make
meet
the
that meet where their mentor is, but it's already an inherent understanding that, the mentee is looking for something more in return. And, generally I'd say mentors are always, are pretty open to that. And there's a reason why they're pursuing and taking the time out of their day to open up those relationships.
how do I put this? So there are going to be definitely be cases like generally speaking, in this wide range of variability out in the world, but I do find that more times than not, the more senior folks tend to be more amenable to wanting to leave some kind of legacy, wanting to help the younger generations, wanting to talk them through a couple, things in general. Um, but along the way, you do also have a reticence from a lot of folks who are like, "Hey, these kids keep asking me for the hack, the shortcut, and like, there's like no respect for the time that I put in, the years of failures, the nights of sitting at my desk at 8 o'clock at night thinking, did I make a colossal error in my choice of career? The times I was fired, laid off, and like they just want the 5 minute breakdown and expect that it should be a given. And I'm like, I mean, weren't you like that when you were younger? Like, I mean, with youth, it comes ignorance, right? Like, and for me, what I tell nowadays is like, look, understand that a lot of these wisdoms that you're getting come with years of trial and error, right? And so I think it's important for you to not demand things, which it should sound so common sense, right? It should sound so common sense, but I've heard the other side of it where the kid is probably in his young early 20s. It's like he's such a jerk. Like he wouldn't tell me this, that, and the other. I'm like, bro, how did you approach this conversation? Like, I want to understand your exact words, right? And then it's like, dude, you're almost demanding that they tell you how to do well at your job. Meanwhile, that's your job, kid. Like, you know,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. There's so much value in putting in the effort because you yourself will learn the lesson in the long run and you'll learn to not make that same step again because most times when you try, most times then often it won't work out. And the only way to figure out how to make it work is to figure out how it doesn't work first. The many like 10 times it doesn't work. Um, and so yeah, I can't stress that enough that there is no short hack or way to get to like longevity in your career and success. You could get very fortunate and have a really awesome opportunity. But if you don't have the consistency in your work and how you show up in your day, that will show up over time. I can't stress enough how important it is to just be consistent because that compounds over time. I mean, I think you hear consistency in about any part of your life when it comes to exercising or how you eat, how you sleep. Your doctors are always telling you to keep that routine. And so it shows up in how you work. If you show up every day and you put in the hours and, you keep putting in the effort, that consistently that result will show up in the long run. And then you'll be able to have a more, sustainable and sustainable career until you kind of see that over the longer time horizon. So, yeah, all this talk about short hacks and how you can get rich quick. Um, I'm very, very skeptical, as you are as well, because we both know that those are short-term gains and you're only cheating yourself.
Mhm.
That's the bottom line.
And that sounds so cliche. So right now, I could hear the eye rolls of like, oh, of course you would say that. But I mean, look, let me be honest. There are going to be some people who hit escape velocity somehow, and they just never cease to fail upwards, right? But with every person that I've seen that does that, probably have seen 50, 100 plus people that took the shortcut, hit some remedial level of success, and then they crashed and burned, right? Like the manager who
Yeah,
never should have been, who social climbed their way up, and then a couple years in, they realized, oh crap, they're incompetent as all heck. They took every shortcut possible, tried to lie their way through it, and then when everything fell apart, they're like, okay, your career's done.
because at the end of the day, when you take shortcuts, you'll hit a ceiling and because of how you show up every day, that routine will stick with you and will be your foundation in how you continue to grow and have this growth mindset. So at some point, if your interest is having, longevity in your career and having a sustainable one, being able to put in that routine is so beneficial, because at some point, if you don't, you'll find yourself in the pool of people who are putting in um, those hours and that consistency, and you'll find that you can hit a ceiling. And I've certainly seen it in my career too, with some people, some peers who kind of start to struggle as they hit a certain level, or they get promoted and then they reach a new pool of people um, that they see as their peers, and everyone kind of at that point has that growth mentality, and it gets just more and more challenging. So, absolutely, you're going to cheat yourself. You're only cheating yourself, and one day it'll show up.
Mm.
And it's really hard then to catch up, because the people who are in that pool with you, they've been doing their routine for years, and then you're starting from scratch while trying to stay afloat. And that's just like a really difficult position to be in, and quite frankly, I think a little stressful.
To say the least. I I know that a good mentor is more than worth their weight in gold. I mean, look, you still have to do the work, you still have to show up, and for majority of the mentors that I've had, it's not that they expected or demanded anything of me, um, in terms of like an ROI of any kind or things of that nature. But I did notice that the more that was done in service of whatever it is that they're working on, and if it did, like for instance, if things that they were mentoring me on was aligned with with what they were kind of doing, then if anything, I would try to do my best to help them in whichever way I can. But I think by now we've also had our share of men- mentors, in scare quotes, that just kind of vampires, man, right? And let me just be quite frank. I mean, everyone wants to take on that big brother, big sis role, and not everyone is cut out for it, right?
Yeah, I would say if someone doesn't meet your expectations or the goal that you're hoping to achieve, don't be afraid to have that conversation, that say, I don't think this is really aligning with what I'm looking for, and I think it may be best for us to end this from relationship. And I'd say don't be afraid to say that, because I think if anything, that shows that you know what you're looking for and you understand how valuable each person's time is.
Mhm.
I'd say if anything, that's actually quite a positive thing to be able to come out and say, um, when you see that you've gained everything that you need from the mentorship, or maybe it's a misalignment, and that's perfectly fine. I think there's a lot of respect in being able to be upfront and honest in a very professional manner.
Oof, girl, you clearly this is not your first rodeo. I mean,
It's tough to have tough conversations, but you come out on top.
Yeah, and this is where I often find that there is like a you can't do that. Oh, don't be. I mean, look, just don't be an asshole, right? Like, there's no need well, there's no need to be rude about these things, right? It's for me. I think this is where a lot of growing up happens, right? And I think being able to have uncomfortable conversations in general is a life skill, right? Can you have this with your coworkers? Can you have it with your bosses? Can you have it with your mentors? Can you have it with your partner? Right? I think it's a skill that I think oftentimes we tend to forget has endless returns on if you learn how to do it successfully, right? It's like, what are you going to do? Keep avoiding
Yeah,
it?
absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. It's just a part of growing up. And like you said, the skills are transferable, being able to have a, direct and honest and candid conversation. I would say that 9 times out of 10, if you think there's a misalignment mismatch, the other party probably tends to agree and likely isn't so shocked. So I think if anything, it comes from a very respectful
Mhm.
um, angle.
Yeah. And that's the key word. Keep it respectful. Okay. I'm sorry. Like, I know I shouldn't be laughing, but I do recall there was like a, hey, like, this hasn't been really that helpful for me. And I was expecting for you to be able to, I was like, you're being specific in the wrong areas. And essentially you told this person that they're being useless. Like, that's not how you want to end things. They're like, that's not how I said it. I'm like, that's how I was like, look, let's take a poll of like 10 people who would read that message and read that message. You didn't have a face-to-face conversation with this person, mind you, right? And you tell me how many people would read that email that you sent to them as like, what the hell's wrong with this kid, right? So for me, just be careful with how we approach these things, you know,
Yeah, I would definitely say a conversation like that too is better to be had
in person.
live, one-on-one,
Mhm.
on the phone at least, over a text message or an email. It's just easier to have that conversation, um, just to be more frank. And I think it's just a respectful way to kind of end the
Mhm.
relationship too.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't have, look again. It doesn't have to be awkward, right? It's like, look, I don't think this is kind of working out because the alignment is not there. I do appreciate the time and your willingness to, at least try to help me out. And when I did ask, I think that speaks really a bit like highly of you. But yeah, going forward, if you need, reach out. But again, thank you for your time and move on. That's it. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Um, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had mentors in the past, and they have all ended as well. So it's just a part of natural cycle. Typically, if you go in with a very specific goal in mind, a very, certain purpose, then you're gonna be on that path and you'll find what you need. And then it may be time to move on to the next one.
just I feel like sometimes there's like I draw a lot of parallels, right? Because it's sometimes it is also akin to like dating, right? Like there are some people that, or just people in general, right? Like as you meet people, some people you will end up knowing for a lifetime. That pool is gonna be so small, like so small, right? And there are a lot of
Hmm.
people that are good for you or that serve you for a season, right? And some people is literally just a glancing passerby that you really should just let them pass by, right? There's a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
and with mentors, I don't think there's that much of a difference, right? For finding a good one, of course, will expedite your trajectory and your velocity in which you may um, excel. But if you find a charlatan mentor, they could do damage. Um, one of the
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, I agree with that. Definitely don't be afraid to have more than one. When you can start to hone in on what you're looking for, you can start to specialize. So say, I want to brush up my marketing skills for this person. And then another one is I actually want to expand my network into another topic or another skill set. So don't be afraid to have multiple,
Mhm.
as long as you're really specific in what you're looking for, and you're being prepared for those multiple conversations.
Mm. Along that vein, out of the mentors that you've had, what do you happen to recall some of, if you don't remember the best one, any of the top will do. Any good advice that you've gotten from mentors that you can recall?
That's a good question. I would say probably some of the best I've ever received was a mentor telling me that your strengths are your strengths and focus and double down on them. I think we can live in a world where we're told to excel in so many areas. And then we're also told that this part is your area of improvement and your opportunity. So really hone and focus on that. But I actually had a mentor who said quite the opposite. He said, it's okay to recognize what you're not good at. And that's when you'll meet people in your life who will compliment you and help bolster those parts of you. Know enough of a baseline. But if you start to dedicate your time towards the things that you're actually really good at, that's how you start to specialize and find your superpower.
I like that. Actually, I like that a lot. Do you recall any bad advice by any chance?
Ooh, I've probably blocked it out of my mind at this point. Some of the good ones, right? When they're good and they'll stick with you. And yeah, they're really, even though like again, I don't have um constant communication with some of these people anymore, the time that they invested and vice versa, it matters. We're building relationships, and especially now everyone is so digital, AI first and heavy, and I think it's so important to keep those connections going, and how you build connections is a life skill that you'll need forever.
I realized that we didn't touch on something. Generally, well, I mean, there's again large range of variability. So for those out there who are saying this is the only way, there's a range. But generally, generally speaking, what was the like? How did it work with a lot of your mentorships? Was it kind of a meeting here and there, like a scheduled meeting with just tight bullet points, like talking outline type situation? Was there more like a hands-on approach for certain things? Like how did a lot of your mentorships work?
Yeah, after the introduction, I would propose I would propose all these things. So I'd propose, let's meet on a monthly cadence, 30 minutes. Does that work with your schedule? They agree, yes or no. And then typically in that conversation, I would say, like, these are the areas that I'm hoping to learn more and accelerate. Does this align and, with what you are, willing to help? And so once that's kind of those expectations are set up front, it makes it a lot easier. So I certainly came into every mentorship meeting with a couple bullet points. Sometimes they got really specific about, hey, I have this type of scenario at work that's going on. I'm having a couple of challenges on getting the project across the board. Can you give me a couple of pieces of advice on how you would best approach it? So it could be very, very specific to a certain situation, or it could be more broadly, I want to learn about this type of skill or this type of space within marketing. What are the resources that help you, stay top of mind? And so it could be more general like that. Um, if you kind of go that route and you start to read those topics, then it's also like a talking point for the two of you to kind of build that interest and expand the relationship as well. So again, I think it's the world is your oyster, but come prepared with what oyster you want. Otherwise, I think those meetings then can be a little bit awkward and one-sided. You really want to have like a natural conversation, where it's a back and forth.
For me, I think there's a bit that you glossed over, but I think it speaks to the level of real work that you put in and care that you put into these relationships that you have. And it's that, it's not, hey, can you give me all the answers? There are cases where, hey, like I need your input, but then there's also, hey, like where should I be looking for me to do my homework? Right? I think that willingness to do my own work so that I show up prepared and come. I'm not looking just for a cheat sheet here. Like I am looking for guidance. I think that's a clear distinction, and I think it helps, right? And to your point, rather than being a one-sided relationship, now you have a dialogue that where you could have a real conversation. Where I think this is the other side of it, right? Like, hey, both of us, we have to show up to work. We both have jobs to do, right? We have, whether it's family, other responsibility, we got bills, we got stuff, man, right? So if you're gonna take time out of my day, even if I did have free time, I could be doing that death scrolling on my phone. I don't need to be sitting here with you talking about things that I already most likely know, right? So I think the fact, to your point, that when I'm willing to do, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and do work, I think speaks volumes. And I think that clearly you're used to, like, this is one of the reasons why I think I enjoy a conversation with, because you're no slouch, right? Like you, girl, I've seen you, like not directly, but I've seen enough of you to understand the work ethic that you put into things, right? I could also imagine that the balls that you have to make the jumps that you do, those require a solid work ethic, right? This doesn't come from, hey, like a guy did me a favor, ex manager, she did me a solid by getting me a promotion. Like, no, I freaking busted my ass and worked for it. I imagine you didn't mean that. You didn't say that consciously. You're thinking like, hey, I need to prove this, that, or third. It's like, hey, this is what I did. This is how I got here. I freaking busted my ass and I showed him that I'm willing to work. Am I off base?
No, you're right on point. It's you're only cheating yourself. And so, if you don't put in the consistent effort up front, it'll show. It certainly will, especially if you're interested in having that really sustainable career over time. I can't stress that enough. People that want to stay in an industry for some time or build out some sort of legacy, accomplish some really cool projects, meet some really great people, you have to put in the effort. You have to put in, the time to make sure you're knowledgeable because at the end of the day, the confidence will really show in the effort and the work that you put prior.
Let me start getting into the mentoring version of the dating icks.
The what?
The mentoring version of the dating icks. The
Mm.
what would be some things that if a potential mentee said or did or whatever, that you'd just be like, nope, next.
Hmm. I mean, I think it's very clear when someone comes in without an agenda,
Mhm.
and because they can tend to ramble without a couple like bullet points or talking points to keep the conversation focused. So I would say not being prepared or not being organized and structured is tough for a mentor to be able to navigate because if the mentee doesn't have a focus and they're just all over the place, there's not a lot of value that's gonna be exchanged. Um, I'd say if it's like too general, too broad, you're just gonna start talking in this like corporate lingo that's actually not very practical for the mentee. So I'd say, yeah, definitely come in with an agenda.
Mhm. One of the things that I tend to ingrain in folks, because look, I think there's a lot of disservice that has been done because of the idea that most of our academic career things were just kind of given to you, right? The
Hmm.
curriculum, the is kind of like, here's the thing, here's the syllabus, you read through it, this is what's right. Like I'm giving you the instructions practically, right? The answers to the exam, study. Like most places, they essentially give you the answers. You just have to regurgitate them in the proper fashion, right? When it comes to mentorships, I, I I'm now of the ilk that this might be one of the first entrepreneurial things that you tend to do, because you, not the mentor, you need to go out and reach out to the mentor. It is your responsibility to maintain the relationship with the mentor. It is you who needs to come prepared. You who needs the help. They're here to help guide you guide you in a way where you can achieve your ends. So if you're gonna go to a mentor, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, man. Come help me. Help you with what? Like, I'm like, this isn't school, man. Like, I'm not trying to figure out how to best increase your GPA, right?
Yeah, I think this goes back to having a career plan.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know what you want to do in 5 or 10 years, it's helpful then for a mentor to understand that. And you can kind of go backwards and say, this is where I want to be in 10 years. This is how I think I should approach it. Let's chat.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? This is my plan. So yeah, come prepared, do your homework, come with a plan, and then you're really looking then for feedback. So that type of mentorship is just feedback of, this is how I'm thinking about approaching my career. These are the jobs I want to apply for. These are the people I'm talking to. What do you think? That's a natural conversation then you can have with someone who will give that sort of guidance of, this is what's helped me in the past, this is what's not. I would even say, I think ChatGPT is great to build a template. So you could just say, ChatGPT, give me a template on an agenda with a mentor where I want to focus on X, Y, and Z. So if you pull in those bullet points of like, these are the topics I want to talk about with a mentor, now build me a templatized agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Great. You need to do the homework in like, what is the content? What is the focus? And then like GPT can spit out that like structure for you real quick. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I love using GPT for these days.
Yeah, I would 1000% agree with that. And I could even take it a step further. If you don't even know where to start, I mean, you could unload that whole mess that is your life, and it'd be like, hey, like based off of this, where do you think I should take this conversation, and then provide me a structure? Because one thing that drives me nuts is I'm part of a couple of mentoring things, and sometimes they're like, hey, you didn't reach out to me. I'm like, huh? No, I'm not hunting you down. Like, I'm not your teacher, first off. But secondly, I did the first conversation I usually say is like, hey, figure out what it is that you want. If you don't know it today, we can talk through it. But I need to know what's going on in your life if you don't know what to zero in on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you do know what to zero on, fine. But if you want to figure it out on your own, GPT is going to be one way to do it.
Yeah, that's also another way. Have the conversation with GPT and see where it goes. But I would say don't take it verbatim and kind of take the GPT output as just some ideas where you can start to use as anchors in your talking points. And 100% what you said before, take the initiative. You're the one who's asking for someone else's time. So you're the one that needs to come prepared and show that you did some work up front. And then it can be an easier conversation. Like if you think about it like a feedback type of conversation, that only works if you have substance or something to show.
Fair enough. Now, hopefully this will be the last question of the night. If you were to choose a specific lane to mentor on, what would it be? Industry, profession, career path, whatever.
I think it'd be helping people find what their career path is. I personally really struggled with that in the beginning out of college. I thought that I would, study finance and I thought I would end up in finance, but I definitely didn't in the end. My career has taken a couple different twists and turns. And so I think that's the area that I enjoy most, helping people understand, like, how do I figure out what my career path is? And that always pivots and that always ebbs and flows. So don't feel like you have to stay pigeonholed into one just because you're doing it today. But that's certainly the type of area that I think is the most exciting.
Absolutely. Well, actually, it does remind me before I let you go. I do at some point want to talk through this whole marketing thing, but we need to know what you've learned, little quirks of the industry, different positions, department, like how all that side of the world works.
Oh, marketing is so fun. It's like such a fun blend between creative and analytical.
Yeah, I need to pick your brain at some point more specific on that. But for now, I think this is where we're gonna end. If I start connecting you with random folks, I apologize in advance, or you're welcome. With that said, if you have any questions, come reach out. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.
Later.